Oh, I'm so shiny. Look at this. There, that's better. It's always good to use a little bit of powder. Take this gleam off of my forehead. Okay, let's get crafting. Today what I've got for you is how to make your very own grocery lists. You may have seen them on my webpage. It's a piece of repurposed cardboard and some pages with some lines on them. Now, I made mine custom because there's a little math trick that I like to use down the left side, but you don't need that. That's just a quirk of mine. To make these pages, it helps to have a paper cutter, but I'm going to do it by hand to show you that anybody can do it. This is 8.5 by 11 standard paper, and instead of having the lines going horizontally, these lines go vertically, and it's vertical lines on both sides. If you look real carefully, you can see that I've marked off the 1/3 points. So the first thing I can do is I can take a ruler and a pencil, and I connect those lines. So this paper is intended for use with a paper cutter, and all you have to do to make this a no paper cutter job is this. I find that about 25 to 30 sheets makes a nice pad, and if there's 3 pieces to 1 piece of paper, 8 pieces of paper printed should be plenty. And I cut 3 or 4 at a time with an ordinary scissor. It's not rocket science, so if it's a little wobbly on the edge, it's not going to hurt anything. This is really a very practical kind of craft. I've got other things that are fun to make, but I thought I'd post one of the early videos here of focusing on a crucial skill for a lot of paper craft, which is the gluing. You know, over the recent years, we've had some amazing developments in the chemistry of glues, so that things that we make at home have become really high quality compared to what they were 30, 50 years ago. So I'll be using a clear with blue dye craft glue that I got, and it was the Nickelodeon brand. It was meant for making slimes, and they had it for $11 a gallon. So I got a gallon, and I'm filling up my old bottle over and over again. If you really like crafting, you're going to run out of glue. It goes fast. There. So I'm holding together 4 sheets of paper at a time, and I'm done in 2 batches. And now I've got the start of my first pad. See, it's a little bit off, but that never hurt anything. This is a very practical thing. The important part is getting the end to be flush, because the first thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put glue on that end there. If you have paper clips or clothespins or similar devices, feel free to use them, but this is a kind of a rough and ready kind of craft. You don't actually need that. I have a small glass bowl, because if you start putting your glue on pieces of paper, it's kind of wasteful. Better to put it in a bowl. And that's about how much I need for this job. So again, square off the ends. Now hold them a little bit bent, curved over one way, and put the glue on the edge like so. Then bend it in the other direction and put a little bit more glue on. I've got glue on my fingers, what do I do? Well, I have a sponge that's been cut into pieces, and the sponge is wet, and I can wipe my fingers on it, just like so. Then I take those edges and I smooth them down like so. And then I'm going to set this aside to dry over here. So what about a backing board? Well, this morning I used up a Rice Krispie box, a popcorn box, and some other backing boards that I had. This is a great job. This is a great use for repurposed cardboard that's not too thick. To make the backing board sizes, I'm going to duplicate what I did with the notepad. I'm going to take a piece of paper. This one has been divided into thirds. This is another file on my Patreon page, and I'll be posting that with this link. But, of course, you could take a ruler and you could measure off. This is exactly halfway between several of these lines. I think it's actually easier to do this in millimeters, and most rulers we have in America are millimeter rulers. So the first mark is at 92 millimeters, and the second mark is at 186. Or you can just fold the paper in thirds roughly. Whatever works for you. This is meant to be an easygoing beginner craft, not a rocket science kind of craft. There's one. And there's the other. Now I'm going to let you in on some of the secrets of how to glue paper to cardboard. This sponge has been wetted all the way through. This end is just water. This end has a bit of glue on it because I was doing gluing. So I wipe the paper quickly with the damp sponge on the side that I plan to glue. And then I wipe the cardboard quickly with the damp sponge. See, a little bit of water there. I like to glue the cardboard side first when I'm doing paper to cardboard. So I've mixed a little bit of water in here. But the mixture I know by practice. If you're new to this, you probably should use a little measuring spoon. The recipe is 1/2 teaspoon water. Hard water is especially good. To 2 teaspoons of the glue. About 1 teaspoon. And there's about 2. One good thing about having the sponge is there's always this little driplet that comes off of the bottle, and I can wipe that right up. And I use the sponge to mix the glue together. It would be easier if I had a big batch, but little batches of glue are important because what I'm doing is I'm making it foamy. This is important. If the glue does not get foamy, I know I don't have the right mixture. If there's too much glue or if there's too much water, I will not get something kind of bubbly and frothy. So what I've done is I've made it kind of the same gooey mess. I'm sort of doing biomimicry. I'm stealing a trick from frogs who have a mucus and they fluff it up with their hind legs because when it's at its maximum strength, by some coincidence, these materials, when they're at their maximum strength, they also make good foam. So I'm wiping off the cardboard. And I turn it around, and I do the other half. When I wipe, it feels slimy. What I want to do is keep wiping until I feel the tackiness set in. If it's not tacky, I wipe it a little bit more. And the moment I feel that it's a little bit sticky, I stop. And I go on to the other side. There. Way too much. It's slidey, gooey. So I keep wiping, and then I can feel that tackiness setting in. I turn it around, do the other side, and then I wipe until I feel that resistance against the sponge. So here's the 2 pieces I want to put together. And the thing about this slidey factor is the foaming that I'm doing when I'm mixing it and the extra water combined with getting it to where it's sticky, there's about 2 seconds in which it slides. I've got 2 seconds to reposition it. And after 2 seconds, it all optimizes positive and negative ions together. And now I can't slide it. It's really useful to have a piece of wax paper. Wax paper is what I use for pressing out the air extra flat. Because, of course, if some of the glue squishes out from under the paper, if it was my hands doing this, the glue would get on my hands and the glue would get onto the back of the paper. This way, the glue is all limited to the underside of the wax paper. There it is. And something about making crafts with this, I'm doing the ancient technique of lamination. I'm putting layers together with layers, and it's an act of will. You just got to keep doing it again and again. So if this is tiresome to you, one thing that I find really helps is just have a cup of tea. Black tea, green tea, both will work, but specifically Camellia sinensis tea, classical British English breakfast tea. There's a chemical in it called theanine, which helps to tone down the part of the mind, the part of the brain that has a capacity to get bored. So if you're doing your taxes, if you're doing something that would tire you out because it's repetitive, one thing you might try is use some tea. Tea is very good for homework. I think the stereotype of Asian people being really good at math, what if it's the tea? course, tea being drunk by Asian people is another stereotype. What if it's the stereotype? So wipe with ordinary water, mix half a teaspoon of water, 2 teaspoons of A glue, foam it up. When it gets foamy, it's got different chemical properties, different physical properties than when it's not foamy. Apply the glue. At first it'll be slippery. So you wipe it lightly until you feel the tackiness. When you feel the tackiness, stop. You might notice I'm wiping first one half and then the other. I usually do about 2/3 from one side. Wipe till tacky, turn it around, do the other 1/3. Make sure it's sticky. Ooh, it's very sticky. And there's about 2 seconds in which you can slide it. Oops, I almost forgot. Wax paper. There's a little bit of glue here. It won't stick to the wax paper. And there's a little glue that got pressed out. Flatten that out. There. That piece there, and the wax paper comes right off. I'm cutting it right away because paper and cardboard are slightly easier to cut just after they've been made wet. They're also a little bit more flexible, so you can see this is bending up floppily. One, two, let's do one more. First the water, do 2/3, turn it around, do the remaining third, wipe water, 2/3, turn it around, do the other third, I like to put the glue on the cardboard part first. Half a teaspoon water, 2 teaspoons white glue, foam it up, wipe it onto the cardboard, and wipe it a few times until you feel that it's tacky. Turn it around, do the other side. slide it around a little bit till it's just right. Wax paper on the top keeps it from sticking. Now my grocery lists aren't two-sided. Mine are actually one-sided, but what's on the other side is old manuscripts that I printed out for proofing. And now I've got paper that's printed on one side with something I totally don't need. But the paper is still in very good shape, so it still goes through the printer just fine. Now I've got 3 of these. I want to make a really strong backing board. I think that when I go shopping, I prefer to have it pretty sturdy, something I can write on without any support underneath. This one I decorated with an old piece of origami paper. Origami paper is incredibly good for covering any kind of small notebook. It's a very long, hard fiber kind of paper. I think this one was like they scanned somebody's kimono. They skinned a samurai and scanned his kimono to make my notepads. There's some beautiful antique Japanese prints on those. So that magical formula of half a teaspoon of water to 2 teaspoons of glue that I keep on repeating, that's kind of magical, because that's about how much glue it takes to cover one 8.5 by 11 inch area here. So this is a nice way to make some customized gifts. It doesn't have to be lined paper. It can be little personalized from the desk of notepads or little inspirational messages or de-inspirational messages if that's your mindset. Half teaspoon water, 2 teaspoons glue. Foam it up like a little frog in a rainforest, making an egg nest with foam. If it doesn't get frothy, I know something's wrong. This is almost as fun as slime. If you've got your slime making skills down pat, then you're all set for this. Wet the side. Wet aside. Put on the glue. Keep wiping it till it gets a little bit tacky. If it's not sticky, you probably have too much glue, but the solution is just keep wiping. Got some on the table. This is non-toxic craft glue. It comes off with soap and water, or if I let it dry, it will get kind of brittle and it's fun to peel off. So as a craft supply goes, it's a very table-friendly one. 2 seconds time of readjusting, and then it seizes up. Put the wax paper on. So when I'm shopping, I'm looking for boxes that are slightly bigger than 8.5 by 11, or slightly longer than 8.5 inches, like macaroni boxes, because if the boxes are just the right size, I can repurpose them later. If they're too small, I can't make this exact ideal size. Get the glue foamy. Well, I hope you're having fun watching this, and I hope it inspires you to do different things that are useful for you, fun for you. And next time you see a box that your recycling might not take, instead of throwing it in, wishing they would recycle it, instead of wish cycling, flatten the box out and make something with it. I've got some more crafts coming later that will be role-playing game, tabletop, board gaming oriented things. And I'll make some files that you can print out at home. So pretty useful items for the GM on a budget. Here I've made something very strong. I've made a 3-layer backing board. This is going to be a really good one. There'll always be a little bit of paper, so I'll trim that off. After making something extra fancy as a gift for somebody else, one of the tricks you can do is you take an old nail file, a used one that isn't serving as a nail file anymore. You can file the edges. Now really I should wait until this is dry, because if I do it when it's wet, I may get little bits of emery board in there. But this is just to show you the idea. So if you want it really flat, all you got to do is file it with a file. like to file the corners off just a little bit. I treat it like a little piece of wood, like a thin slat of wood here. There, that's much nicer. So the next step on this could be to take an old birthday card or a printout of a favorite picture, or make a little collage, put a bunch of them on. And to help protect this surface, I take that same glue and I put a layer of the glue on the backing board, and I cover all the edges too. I learned this in the Peace Corps. No, I was never in the Peace Corps. I learned this from a web page of somebody in the Peace Corps who was showing how to make solar cookers out of cardboard and aluminum foil. And the back side of the cardboard was brown corrugated cardboard. So they took Elmer's glue, aliphatic resin, polymer, pretty much this stuff, and coated it with the glue. Once that glue dries, it isn't waterproof, but it's water resistant. So if somebody spills that lentil stew onto their solar cooker, it's really easy to clean up with a damp cloth. Okay, gotta let that dry. Here's a bare cardboard side. Now what I'm going to do next is, remember the little notebook we made? There it is. Pages are all hanging together, just like they should be. I want a little bit more glue. I usually apply it on a finger like this. And I put the glue onto the top there. If the glue gets onto the top here, onto this top sheet, and it's a present, you might want to take that top sheet off, or you can put a piece of paper on purpose on top here that when you're done, you just rip that little scrap away. And now I put some glue here. A little more than that. To help the pages stay together, I put a little bit on the edge here, on the edge of the pad, and a little bit on the edge here, not a lot. And smear this around. Put some glue on top here. If you're the kind of person who can't stand to have glue on your fingers, rest assured you don't have to do it the way I'm doing it now. I'm just doing it quickly to show you. I've got glue on here and glue on the underside of the cardboard, the top side. So I put these two together. And I'm using the same piece of wax paper. It's crooked here, but it's still not set, so I can slide it. There, now it's set. Oh, I got the glue everywhere. And the glue comes off your fingers, of course. So that's how to make your very own notepads with custom designs on them and repurpose that used cardboard that you thought was just going to have to be composted or thrown away. There it is.